What's up, friendly neighborhood nerds? Thank you for watching our video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell.
What's up, friendly neighborhood nerds? This is Judah Rad, and I'm here with Robo and Ree. And today we have a very special guest. Based out of LA, he is an animation designer known for his work on DuckTales and Adventure Time. He wrote Pirate Club as well as something called Derek Hunter is a Fuck. currently writing Pretty Violent for Image. Thanks for joining us, Derek Hunter. How's it going?
Hey, thanks for having me, everybody.
It's good to have you.
I'm surprised you. Most people don't mention Derek Hunter as a fuck, so here we go.
With a title like that, how can you not?
So man, I read all of Pretty Violent so far. I think you're up to issue 7 now, and I love it. It's hilarious. When's it going to be adapted for Adult Swim? Is what I want to know.
I mean, I had some pitch meetings set up right when COVID hit, so so my meeting with Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon and Netflix have been pushed to who knows when. I'd love to get it off the ground as an animated series. I think it'd be really fun. There's plenty of material there to fuck with. So yeah,
that's awesome.
It's an exciting prospect, but nothing is for sure. Even when you feel like you've got really good, solid, foundation for what you're doing, it's just like you can't hang your hat on anything.
Right.
You just can't know.
Yeah.
There's certain parts, like you remember with like a Ren and Stimpy where it would be like a gross close up, like randomly interesting. I could see that working really well with Pretty Violent.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yes, I definitely enjoy those close ups of horrificness.
Yeah. We were actually trying to compare before we started this interview. We were talking about what Pretty Violent reminds us of, and I don't know if you ever saw that series Drawn Together. Kind of reminds us of that.
Oh, I never watched it, but yes, I do know I do know the show.
It's great. Yeah. But it's kind of like mixed with Powerpuff Girls, and then it's obviously soaked in gore. But I have to know what inspired this. Like, what gave you this idea?
Well, I mean, the specific idea of the characters themselves are very separate from like the idea to push it in a more adult fashion. So I was actually going to do Pretty Violent as an all ages family comic book, if you can believe it. Because really the story I wanted to tell is which I think is important for especially kids maybe, is the story of growing up the black sheep of a family, but still kind of like showing that you can have positive relationships with family even though you don't see eye to eye on everything. And that sometimes, and also in my case at least, growing up a very like liberal punk rock kid growing up in a fundamentalist Christian conservative household, I a lot of times saw their support as they supported me the best they could, but because they weren't on the same wavelength as I was, emotionally, intellectually, whatever, I saw their efforts as something other than what they were. So I kind of wanted to show Gamma Ray getting frustrated by what she saw as her siblings' efforts to kind of like support her as undermining her.
That's right.
Just kind of like painting that picture of like, look, we can all get on the same page. We can love each other and still get along and help each other. But we also have to be mindful of not everyone understands how to help us. So if we don't keep those lines of communications open, shit's going to go sour.
Holy shit, relatable. That's awesome.
So I wanted to do it as an all ages book, but I have no connection to that world. Like the Scholastic and those, major bookstores. But I do know a ton of people in comics, and I knew that the only way to get noticed in comics, at least drawing the way I do, very cartoony, is to go over the top with like profanity and, violence. And so I was like, oh, well, I love drawing that shit anyway. And I'm very vulgar in my speech anyway. So it's like, just putting that in with the story of Gamma Ray and her siblings, it wasn't unnatural to me at all, even though it wasn't what I had initially intended for it to be, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And you talk about like gruesome and violence and stuff like that. Not that Image is new to that stuff at all, but was there anything that Image in your pitch, did you receive any pushback?
No, not at all. In fact,
they said, "Can you make it worse?" No.
I didn't get feedback, period. It was just like, I just got an email from Eric Stevenson. They're like, "Yeah, man, sounds good."
That's awesome.
My series is actually nothing like the pitch that I sent. So, because, I thought it was going to be one thing, but then you write the first issue and you're like, oh, it'd actually be kind of cool if it went this way instead of that way. And so, yeah, the first arc is very different from the arc I pitched, but the people at Image are super supportive, and they don't like to get in the way of the creative process from my end, at least. I'm sure some people try to do more objectionable things that maybe Image would be like, pump the brakes on this.
That's right, yeah. Right. So when you said earlier that you have a cartoony kind of design, right? So once I looked at this book, when I first got it, I'm not gonna lie, just speaking personally, I'm a fan of grit and realism, right? And so when I first picked up the book, I was like, okay, this book's not for me. But then but I'm looking at the cover, and as I look, I'm like, wait a minute, what the hell's going on here, right? So there's this awesome like combination of that cartoony deal that seems for children at first glance, but then goes into that violence gore. What has been some like fan reactions to this kind of stuff, like to the art specifically?
I mean, with all this COVID stuff, I haven't been able to get out to conventions like I wanted to with the book, which would be really where you get the feedback for the most part.
Are you on Twitter? Because I heard Twitter's full of nothing but healthy, good feedback.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I've actually had nothing but good personal interactions on Twitter.
Awesome.
The reactions have been good. I've definitely noticed in some reviews, reviewers that have a very similar stance to where you're at, which I begrudge zero people for having that opinion, because like I grew up, my first comic was like Amazing Spider-Man 350. So that was like right when Image was about to hit.
That's right.
So I loved all that gritty shit. And if I were a more diligent artist and a little bit more interested in studying and practicing, then that is probably how I would draw now. I'd probably draw a lot like that more realistic, gritty cartoon comic style. So yeah, I've heard that from some people, but I think the violence and the gore and the twists and turns can pull people into what I'm doing, despite being different from what they normally consume.
Now, to be clear, and at risk of sounding like I'm blowing smoke up your ass, I love the book, and I'm glad. If I had put it back because I'm like, not my art, I would have been missing out. I just want to make that clear that the book is hilarious. Yeah.
And honestly, like, I've been a professional working artist for 20 years, so like hearing people say it's not my cup of tea, 0% problem. So even if you did not have that caveat, no problem.
Okay.
But I appreciate it.
Sure.
But I appreciate it. Thank
you. It works, man. It's so eye-catching, and it's definitely, that's one of the things I love about Image is it's got to be it's one of my favorite publishers, just because the mixed bag. You can get anything you could possibly dream of is somewhere in Image. You know, it's awesome. So one of the parts that made me laugh a lot, I'd say, kind of a running theme, the funniest parts involving just random profanity. And at one point, there's a line of dialogue related to jerking off to hanging with Mr. Cooper, and that definitely that definitely made me laugh out loud. So on that note,
don't ask me if I ever.
Yeah, there it is.
That's not.
Okay, all right.
Go ahead. Was that what you were gonna ask?
No.
Okay.
So anyway, next question.
Oh my God.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
How you already kind of answered this related to like growing up as a kind of a liberal punk rock type guy.
Yeah.
Is there anything else about this comic that draws sort of from your personal history? And I'm not just talking about jerking off to hanging with Mr. Cooper.
Right.
Yeah. But if I mean, I'll leave it open ended.
No, it definitely does. This story is like 100% as far as like the bones of the characters and the motivations of the characters. It's 100% my personal experience. I grew up in like a very strict Mormon conservative family, and I have 6 older sisters, and they just like doted on me and like spoiled me, and I was like their little man, and like they're all like 10 years and more older than me. I was a mistake, so I came way later. So they're all almost like aunts to me more than like sisters, because I don't remember growing up with them. And they're all super conservative, and then I was like this weird skateboarding punk rock. I was in bands, and I was going to all these, like, I grew up in the Bay Area, so I was going to all these like punk rock shows, going to see like Rancid and AFI, and at these like dingy small clubs. And my parents and siblings were all super cool with it. They didn't get it, but they're like, yeah, you and your dirty, disgusting friends can have band practice in our garage. Yeah, you can have a show, and when the cops inevitably get called, we will come out and we will support you. And
Nice.
So my family was very supportive in their own way.
Sure.
And when I was young, I didn't get it. I thought that they were squares and like, Mom, don't bring brownies into band practice. Just get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Because it's not cool, right? It's
Right.
not cool. But now looking back, it's like, oh, they were being supportive in their own way.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so I kind of wanted to explore those themes of being the black sheep, but not trying to distance yourself from your family, or your family not trying to paint you in a bad light, because my parents never did, my family never did, my siblings. And so that was like really important to me to kind of like explore those themes. But I also didn't want it to be super preachy, so they're like under the radar a lot of the time. But yes, very, very autobiographical. And then the blood and guts. Yeah, it's just like, grew up reading Savage Dragon. That's my favorite comic as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Nice.
you know, Scud the Disposable Assassin was hugely influential. And I shared a studio for like 10 years with Ryan Otley. So that'll, you know,
Oh, nice.
that'll rub off on you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool. It's interesting. We were talking about, it's like the day and age in 2020 where controversial shit, it's hard to get across the line, right? Like you've got all these blackface episodes from Community and Always Sunny being
Right.
pulled down. So one thing we hear a lot from the entertainment industry is, oh, you couldn't do it that way anymore. You couldn't get away with that. How, when you're writing, obviously like you've got all these influences from 10, 20 years ago where it was like really over the top, but like do you have any safety nets or people that you go to and say like, is this too much? Like how do you figure out, because I know you said Image doesn't really push back.
No, and that's like a really good question, and I it's probably not obvious from my book, but I am very cognizant of who I'm punching at. You know, am I making fun? Like, I mean, there's a character in the book that's in a wheelchair.
That's right.
And there are jokes pointed towards him, but he is not a joke.
Right. Gamma Ray's the joke. She's the one who doesn't understand, right? Versus making fun of that guy. Yep.
Yeah, and so am I going to miss the mark? Is there potential for me to miss the mark? Yeah, of course. Of course there is. But I'm not afraid of that because I'm also willing to apologize, and I'm willing to recognize that I don't know everything.
Right.
And so if someone comes to me and says like, yo man, that was shitty, I'll just be like, wow, please tell me how that was shitty, and I will not do that again. And I don't know why that's so hard for people to wrap their head around. Like,
Right.
I don't see people getting canceled for doing wrong shit
Right.
unless they refuse to apologize.
That's exactly it. I mean, there's really two ways to go about it. You can do that, like, okay, help me be better. Or you can say, oh, I'm sorry, did this hurt you? Where clearly you're a beta cuck and fuck you. So
right, you soy boy.
you just pick
soy
one.
boy.
Yeah, you just pick one. I don't,
Well, let's just say there is a character coming up in Pretty Violent called the Omega Cuck. And it is definitely me making fun of those assholes who bandy those kind of terms around. I think it's really shitty to kind of like try to use free speech as a shield against accountability or responsibility.
Yeah,
because like we all mess up.
That's
and
right.
Like you just say like this isn't cool.
That's
I will stop.
That's right.
And I have a son with Down syndrome, and I've got, I grew up with 6 older sisters, and I know people try to use I have sisters, I have a wife.
Right.
But like I grew up with like no men, so I feel like I did see them cry, I did see them experience pain, and I didn't have a brother to go bro up with and be like, these bitches need to stop crying.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, exactly.
I was just forced to be like, why did this person make you cry?
Right.
And
to listen and to be empathetic. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I can tell you right now, I haven't read about this character yet, but my Twitter handle is 99% going to be mega cuck at some point in the near future. So what does Gamma Ray's voice sound like?
My daughter.
So not a New Jersey accent. Okay, I was wrong. I listened.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So do you have like a voice actress in mind who
he wants you to do the voice. I'm just gonna cut.
I want you to do the voice. That's
no. I actually don't like hear voices in my head when I write characters so much as I really do just think of the personality and decide. It's less like a timbre or an accent, and it's more like, what would a piece of shit say if someone told them that they were wrong?
That's right.
And I do have a 9-year-old daughter, and originally the book was going to be about a boy, but I was watching her, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, my kid is crazy. Like, she tries so hard to be good, and when she fails, she freaks the fuck out because she knows what she wants, and when she can't do it, she's mad at herself.
Right.
And I was already kind of like brainstorming this story about a hero raised by villains who's trying to be good but doesn't know how. And I just saw my daughter like going through those exact same things at that exact moment. I'm like, oh, I gotta like make this a girl, so that I can more accurately portray my daughter,
right,
as a character named after my wife.
Right.
So
that's awesome.
Because my wife's name is Ray. So
cool.
That's awesome.
Cool. That is awesome. I kind of want to skip this question that I wrote down because I feel like you already answered it. I was going to ask, when did you first draw someone's flesh being violently blasted off of their face?
10th grade or 5th grade.
Oh, okay.
When I was 10.
That's
awesome. That comic got confiscated by my 5th grade teacher, and I never got it back. I really bummed out about it.
Oh man, I'd like to get a hold of that. So was there an eyeball with a tail blasting off and brain?
Yes, and the climax was the hero rescuing the president's daughter from the top floor of the Transamerica building in San Francisco, because that's where I grew up.
Nice.
And shoving a live grenade in his mouth, duct taping it shut, and kicking him out the window.
That's awesome.
That's my.
You couldn't get away with that these days. These days, you just got.
Nope.
There's like this '90s artist. I haven't seen anything from him in a very long time, but he did a lot of album covers, like Rob Zombie and Metallica. His name is Pusshead, and
I don't know.
Oh, you should definitely check him out. There's a lot of brains and eyeball shit.
I feel like he did like some crack magazine stuff too.
into my search engine right now. Oh, I know this, definitely. Oh, I definitely know who this is. Yeah. It's some Misfits stuff too.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
no, I feel like we could have a whole separate conversation about music because I feel like we like a lot of the same stuff.
Probably.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, getting back to Pretty Violent for a second, I know that what I read was that you started this more of as a hobby, right? To get this, and then Image picks it up, and now you have deadlines. Now you have to get this done, right? So it becomes less of a work of joy, but maybe mixed with work. Has this? How do you feel? Because you're no stranger to the entertainment industry in general, but how do you feel about the comic book industry itself?
I mean, I always wanted to be in the comic industry, definitely more than I wanted to be in the animation industry. Animation just has a pension and healthcare. So,
fair.
You know, you try to carve out a lane in the place where you can best provide for your family.
Right.
And I've been trying to kind of like break into comics as a part-time thing since like 2003. And it was just never something that I felt confident enough to 100% devote my time to. And that just makes it really hard to carve out an audience for yourself, because consistency really does seem to be the way to do that. But I've been making like mini comics and little self-published things since 2003. So I have been a fairly constant staple of at least certain comic conventions. And I've been able to, most of my friends are probably comic book artists and writers, like the people that I talk to on like a daily basis or whatever. So I love the comic industry. I love that at least the people I hang out with are almost all just doing creator-owned books. They're telling their own stories. They don't take, you know, direction from anybody.
Sure.
And that's kind of what I've always wanted to do, especially growing up as like a punk rock kid, where like your friend's band makes 7-inches and like 7-inch records and like folds the sleeves on their kitchen table and like takes a milk crate full of like LPs to a show and it's just like, hey, here's our new album or whatever. Like,
that's awesome.
That was always really cool to me, making your own t-shirts in your garage and stapling mini comics on your kitchen table before like driving out to San Francisco to go to the Alternative Press Expo and stuff like that.
The DIY punk ethos.
Yeah, it just calls to me for sure.
Yeah. Do you so then this didn't taint anything. Do you have other stories in your head? I'm sure you do. But like pitches ready, like when you're done with Pretty Violent, are you going to stay in the industry? Can we expect more books out of you?
Well, Image has my next book pitch at their office. So Eric Stevenson has my next pitch, and he's busy and has a million different things.
Sure.
But I did get an email from him recently like, yo, I didn't forget about you. Your pitch is on my desk. I'm sorry. I'll take a look at it.
That's awesome.
So I do have my next project there, and I have about 9 pages left on the last issue of the second arc of Pretty Violent. And if sales pick up and get to a point where like we can do a third arc, I'll keep doing it. If not, then I mean, Image doesn't cancel books, but like if I'm not making money, I have to kind of be like,
right,
because I turn down freelance work to make my comics. So it's like I can't keep spending my nights and weekends drawing comics if it's not going to make any money, when I could also be working on like other cartoons and like making money. So it's a shitty part of doing it as like a part-time thing where especially when you've got kids and a mortgage and all that stuff.
That's like, absolutely right. Yep.
Because I could draw Pretty Violent the rest of my life.
But if it's not paying the bills, then, you know, yeah, that makes sense.
Or at least not justifying the time. Like, it doesn't need to pay the bills, but I definitely have to be able to feel confident, like, listen, family, I'm not wasting my time on this. Like, something's coming of it.
That's right. That's right.
So
cool.
That kind of answers my next question. I was going to say, do you want it to be a forever title or do you have an ending in mind? But it sounds like you've got at least 2 arcs in your head of what's upcoming. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you said you could write it forever if they'd let you, so that's pretty dope.
And honestly, like, it's something I want to come back to, even if we have to put a break on it to do a new project. Like, I have Jason and I have like at least another like 12 issues kind of like loosely outlined that I want to draw so bad, like introducing new superheroes and like new dimensions and new worlds, and we want to go in space and underwater and
oh yeah,
just like I wanted, like, there's some kaiju stuff that we want to do, and some like space dragons, and yeah, just there's so much fun stuff that I want to do, and you know, we'll come back to it for sure, even if we take a break to do something new. It's what I want.
Super dope.
Yeah.
Exciting.
So transitioning to your TV side, your animation side of what's going on. So when I think about comics and animation in general for the 80s and 90s, it seemed like the main point of that whole thing was to sell toys, right? So after you come home from school, you watch these 30-minute long commercials, really, is what it was, right? But it seems like the industry's kind of changed. Toys R Us are closing. We're not really selling commercials anymore. Like, what is the biggest changes when you think about the work you do now? The biggest difference, between the work you do now and then what vets in the industry talk about, vets who were animating in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, you know, actually, it really does seem like things for the 9-to-5 worker in the animation industry haven't changed a whole lot.
Okay.
But you talk to those older showrunners, like the people that are used to being in those meetings with the toy executives and used to being in those meetings with you know, advertising partners and stuff like that, and it was a pain in the ass, and I won't name names so that I can't get in trouble for this, but like, toy designers are, in some instances that I've heard of, way worse at designing toys than animation designers. So really? a toy designer will come in to, like, let's say a Batman show, and they're like, look at this Batmobile we designed, and the animators are like, cool, that's dog shit. But like, the toys sell the show,
sure,
so the toy makers are like, too bad, this is the one that's going to be in the show.
Wow.
So why aren't they hiring animators to kind of oversee those projects? Seems like a no-brainer.
I think, you know, the talent goes where the most exciting work is, and I think it took toys have been dying for a while, and so you've got older designers, tired designers, jobber designers, just kind of like, here's a Batmobile, whereas like the hungry, thirsty, excited artists may not necessarily gravitate to the big toy brand companies. They're maybe going to, like, you know, Four Horsemen, or going to NECA, or going to Sideshow Collectibles, or these smaller companies that are doing rad shit.
High quality toys.
Maybe Kenner, Hasbro, Toy Biz, whatever, are not making those awesome design decisions anymore. And I think you're seeing that a little bit in animation now, because the higher ups are so used to working with toy companies that the younger kids, like, and I'm not one of them, I'm 40, but I still agree with the younger kids. They're like, yo, stop worrying about TV, like, make apps, make games, make like stuff on the internet, because kids are not hanging out in toy stores.
That's right.
So it takes a while for industries to catch up, I think. But for the day-to-day worker, it's basically the same, except you're definitely seeing more diversity, which leads to more interesting stories. More avenues that haven't been really tackled and explored, and that's just exciting to see people come in and be like, well, here's my life experience, and then all the white people in the room are like, oh, we never would have thought of that unless you came in here. This is amazing.
Right.
You get a lot more of that.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
Okay, I'm going to drag us all down for this question. Sorry.
No, go for it.
Sorry. Talking about toys, but I'm like, yeah. So toxic fandom is a term that gets used a lot these days, and I'm wondering if you, as someone that's intimately involved with modern cartoons, do you have to deal ever with like elder millennials who tell you that you've destroyed their childhood or what have you?
I've been pretty lucky. DuckTales was pretty well received across the board. So we didn't hear a lot of people talking about like ruining childhoods or anything like that. And then Adventure Time was like pretty much completely accepted by that kind of that subset of a fandom that would maybe be toxic.
Sure.
But I see it, and I don't know where it comes from. I don't know where that sense of ownership comes from that drives a fan to feel like they can attack someone who's just doing their job the best of their ability.
That's right.
It's entitlement, and it's crazy.
Yeah, and I don't know where it comes from, so I'm hesitant to completely shit on people who fall into that trap. I wish there was more productive dialogue surrounding these very divisive things that are happening in the world, and I think that goes obviously beyond toxic fandom.
Sure.
I think we all know that divisiveness sells, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, I don't see it a lot, and I think the loudest, they're just loud. I don't think there's many of them. They're just pricks.
Yeah. I know I've seen a lot of it with like Ninja Turtles. I would say out of all the like old stuff that's come out, and I wonder if it has more to do with what was the target audience of that 90s crowd versus what's the target audience today. So I watched the hell out of DuckTales. I could probably still sing the entire original theme song. But your DuckTales is like outside of, I mean, really even, I'm also going to be 40 in 2 months. So even the Adventure Time, I think kind of like missed me. I'm outside of that demographic. So I don't really see it. But then if you take Ninja Turtles that had its run from, what was it, 86, 87, all the way to 2000, whatever. You have this gambit of people that look at something new and get super angry at nostrils. Like really mad. I think because it's still something they want to watch, and it doesn't match what I felt when I was 11.
People just get upset. They don't think it's made for. They're like, well, why isn't this cartoon made for me?
And I don't. That's the thing I don't understand, because like, honestly, out of all my friends growing up, nobody liked Star Wars more than me. Nobody. But like, I haven't liked Star Wars since 1999. Like, it just didn't speak to me anymore. But like, I don't give a shit. Like, I can watch Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi all day long.
Right. It's still there.
I don't need to like the new ones or feel they speak to me, because ostensibly they shouldn't be for me. And you see that with comics. When we were 11, comics were made for us. The comics aren't made for 11-year-olds anymore.
It's not. No. Yeah, 100%.
So I don't quite know where comics fall on that conversation, because they are made for the fans and not new readers anymore.
That's right.
So
I think comics,
and that's a broad. Sorry, that's painting with too broad of a brush. I understand.
Well, I think we need to reframe just how we perceive comics as not a genre, but an entire medium that can, people think of comics, immediately their mind goes to superheroes. Immediately they think of a very specific type of comic, but that's like thinking of movies and your mind immediately going to
horror or whatever.
Horror. Yeah. There's always going to be comics for kids. There's always going to be comics for adults. And, there's no sense in getting upset that one thing that you don't like exists, as long as you can find the things that you do, So.
Yeah, and I think it would be nice if the kid comic space could mix a little bit more with the adult comic space, so they don't feel so separate, because, there's a lot of great all ages comics being put out right now that kids are just going nuts for, or not even all ages, but like manga. Like, kids just soak that shit up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And
Scholastic has kind of dipped into it as well over the last few years. With their the Babysitter, it was the Babysitter Club series. and really great, really compelling stories for young adults and kids. So it's just nice to see the medium itself expand. And
yeah, and I think it is, and I think the audience is just catching up with the medium as it expands.
So real quick, Judah, can you show your shirt real quick? Yeah. So it says, "I'm not confident that not a single 10-year-old exists that I can't beat to death with relative ease." Written by some dude named Judah Rad.
Yeah, that's
good.
Some dude.
Sounds
So
good.
so here's a question for you. Not that shirt is directly related to this character at all, but let's just say hypothetically, Damian Wayne is gonna fight you. He doesn't have any swords, any ninja stars, nothing. Only his hands and his feet. Do you think you can beat up an 11-year-old Damian Wayne?
Oh, beat up?
Oh yeah.
Now, okay, so are we talking like, I have, like, even in the hypothetical, I don't want to beat up a 10-year-old.
So
you have to get away from him. Get away.
You have to. No, he's faster than you. He'll beat you. Yeah, he's gonna break your hands, and now you can't feed your family. So you gotta beat him up. I'm not saying that you have to. You don't have to gamma ray him.
Okay, I'll just sucker punch his windpipe.
Yeah,
I'll just sucker punch his windpipe.
Right. He's 11, right?
And if I have to kick him in the balls,
right,
I'll do that.
And then you can walk away.
Get away.
Yeah.
Then I get away.
Yeah.
It stemmed from a conversation we had about teenage and child sidekicks and how it doesn't matter how good at karate they are. Any adult could beat their ass.
It's so irresponsible.
Yeah.
Why the fuck is Bruce Wayne
taking these kids?
Yeah. No, it should not be happening. It shouldn't be happening. The Richards family taking Franklin out on the town.
Yeah.
Get the fuck out of here.
We were watching the cartoon, and I'm like, all the ninja stars. Okay, got it. Sword, got it. He's raised on it. But I watch him punch Deathstroke in the face, and Deathstroke's like, ugh. I'm like, no, that's not happening. Okay.
No,
that's all.
They need superpowers.
Yep.
They need to be gamma ray.
That's right. That's believable. I can't be gamma ray. I'm dead.
All right. So, one last question I got for you.
Go for it.
You get to send yourself a letter right before you take your first gig in the entertainment industry. Ooh. We're assuming that time travel exists and that you can send letters back in time.
Only for letters, though.
Yeah.
Only for letters, though. You can't send items. Okay.
Okay.
What are you gonna say? What does this letter say? What advice are you gonna give a young Derek Hunter?
I mean, if we're going for like artist advice, what I would say is an older artist to a younger artist, I'd say like, do not link your self-worth to what other people feel about your artwork. Like, cut that shit out right now, because that causes pain and depression and all that stuff. And I've gotten away from that at this point, so I can handle like bad reviews and bad critiques of artwork, where I couldn't easily before. And then the other thing I would say is just keep your eye on the prize. My first series, Pirate Club, like, I had such huge faith in that, and it sold dog shit. And I just took that as, well, I guess comics doesn't want me. And so I kind of like stepped away and just made self-published work, because I still loved it, but I stopped trying to go for mainstream success. And I think I really set myself back in a lot of different ways, because I could have just seen it as an opportunity to grow and like look at my body of work and say like, all right, what hit, what didn't, what can I do to make things work better? But I just took it as a failure on its face, and that was it. So I think just if I had just like hit the ground running with my next book and just tried that and on and on and on, I probably would have made Pretty Violent 10 years ago, instead of 2 years ago.
I do want to read Pirate Club, right?
It's old. It's black and white.
Think I can find it? We're gonna find it. Maybe on eBay or something.
Probably eBay. I think Amazon has the graphic novels, to be honest. I think they're still on there, and I think they're cheap. Slave Labor Graphics, if their web store is still open, they might still have them. Last time I checked, they were like selling them for like $4 or $5 each. And there's 2 graphic novels.
I'm gonna send you an autographed copy, Judah. Oh, Wow, thanks.
Oh yeah, I actually don't have any.
Oh.
Don't have any, if you can believe it.
Oh.
The publisher gives you so many copies, and then once
Sure.
you run out, it's like you either buy more or you just say, well, all right, I'm sick of taking those old things to conventions.
Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome. So
But I would if I had them. Yes, of course.
You know what though? But it's the thought that counts. So just knowing
But
that.
actually, I could just send you the PDFs if you want.
No, I gotta buy them. Okay. All
I
right.
can do that.
send them. Send them.
Yeah, Sweet.
So, Derek, thank you very much for coming on to the show. This has been great. Before we sign off, Judah, Reed, you got any last questions? Anything that you wanted to ask and couldn't?
I want to have a whole separate YouTube episode where we bullshit about punk rock and metal and stuff like
Dude,
that. But
I'd love
Yeah.
it, man.
all right.
That'd be
What
awesome.
about you, Marie? Anything?
Ray, no, just thanks for being here.
All right. Thank you again. It was an honor to have you out here, guys. Check out Derek Hunter, Pretty Violent, and just Wikipedia him because he has some other work out there that I'm sure that you want to watch. Until next time,
Subscribe,
take it
ring
easy.
the bell and be free. Follow our links and watch our show because you want to and not because of the threats. Thank you for watching Judah, Robo, and Ree. We talk about comics, movies, and TV. Sometimes we have notable guests, and sometimes it's just us. But we're also cool.